Hey, what's up everyone, Dragon back here, and here to tell you that you should be reading Nerilka's story. So Nerilka's story is a 1986 novella written by the late Anne McCaffrey and takes place in the fictionalized universe of the Dragon Riders of Pern. And essentially it is kind of a snapshot or a moment in the life of the character Nerilka, who basically is born in kind of more of a privileged family, if you will, and how she essentially kind of turns her back on that to essentially kind of aid the population during a time of like kind of turmoil when there's an outbreak of a plague that is, killing a lot of people in a lot of the various settlements, and they're trying to basically ensure that the wares, which is where the dragon riders live, don't come in contact with it, because without the dragon riders, Pern will not survive. So it's essentially her kind of, for lack of a better term, climbing down from the ivory tower and rolling up her sleeves and getting her hands dirty. It is someone who has everything and doesn't need to basically get involved, choosing to do so, realizing that in the face of something so catastrophic, that really money and wealth and status and all these things that we attribute so much to really doesn't count for much at all. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're someone homeless living in an alley, or you've got $1 billion in the bank. When confronted with something like a plague outbreak or like a natural disaster, we are all kind of equal. Yes, if you have money and power, you can essentially perhaps afford better medical attention or what have you. But in the case of a situation where there is no cure, it's really only a matter of time before it gets to you. The people on the ground might be more subject to come in contact with the contagion first, but ultimately it's going to travel up the ladder, and the clock's ticking essentially. But she kind of, of her own volition, goes and tries to do something, goes to try to contribute, understanding that ultimately we're all in this together, and that this world was founded upon kind of a shared ideal, the notion of that we want to not make the same mistakes of those who came before, those who came from Earth, essentially, and other worlds, and basically people who were looking to flee not just the conflict that had kind of driven them out, but at the same time just kind of the mentality and the status quo. Basically, they wanted to build a society, a civilization that was better than those of their ancestors. And a big part of that is to not fall into the same kind of social trappings of that, and that is basically, again, thinking yourself better than someone else because of your financial standing. It's especially if you're born into it. I mean, it's not like you yourself did anything to acquire set wealth. You just happen to be born of wealthy parents. If that homeless person you see on the street panhandling was born to billionaire parents, they'd be in the same situation as you, and vice versa. If you were like, no one, everyone would love to be born into wealth, but unfortunately not all of us are able to, be. Most of us are not, in fact. So it's a situation where she does not see herself as above it. She does not see herself as not needing to be involved, even though she doesn't need to be. She chooses to, because she realizes that wealth is a luxury, or status is a luxury that comes from good time. When everything is going right and certain people can achieve through hard work and acquire more, certain families will rise to prominence, that's fine. But ultimately, that's a luxury that comes, in times of peace, in times of prosperity. When, the population as a whole is, threatened, what matters most is survival. And for that to happen, is that everyone needs to help out. Everyone needs to do their part. Once that's resolved, we can go back to, the luxury of, status. But that's what it very much is. So it's a short story, again. It's only a little over 100 pages. But it also does a good job of giving a perspective in this world that's not of a dragon rider, for instance. It's kind of, yes, she comes from more status, but she's also seeing the dragon and the dragon riders, for instance, from kind of a similar perspective as we the reader, because in our world we're not dragon riders. So even though there are dragon riders in Pern, not everyone, it's not like you're born in Pern and everyone gets their own dragon. It's a select group of people. So we're kind of seeing what it's like, more like if we were there. If we were there and we were the average person there, which would not be a dragon rider, we're kind of experiencing this conflict, this issue from that perspective. So it's interesting in that sense, because again, it's a more normal, I guess, take on what could very well, or which is already kind of a more sci-fi fantasy-esque story, but kind of grounding it in a more reality-based viewpoint, i.e., someone who's not, aside from being again born to status, nothing special about her. So for that reason, again, I think it's a nice introduction to this whole world if you're new to it. It's not very long, and you really won't be that lost, because the book does a good job of kind of covering a lot of the basis for what this world is, what's going on, kind of the status quo. It kind of gives a good brief rundown of the Dragon Riders and how they all work and the function they serve, so you understand right away the significance of making sure they stay quarantined away from this contagion. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, there's not a lot to say. Just that it's a nice read, and it's a great story with a heroine character who is, again, it feels very real. She is strong in the sense that, again, she's willing to roll up her sleeves and get the job done. She's not, kind of a cartoon character heroine, where sometimes I feel like, unfortunately, when people try to depict, women as, strong heroic characters, they almost kind of make them very kind of strong and forceful to such almost a cartoony degree, where it feels very, pardon the term, try hard. But she feels like a real person, and you don't question her strength, because she doesn't need to walk around and act like tough as nails. She's strong because she of what she does. It's her action. That's how she's willing to put herself before others and do what needs to be done in the moment, no matter how big or small. And you realize that she is a strong, capable, steadfast individual. And then her being a woman really is besides the point. And that is kind of also the point of this whole story. It doesn't really matter if you're a man or a woman, rich or poor. It is a situation in which we are all equal in the face of this issue, and that we all need to work together and do our part to try to resolve it, to try to find a way to stop what's happening. So it's a great story in the sense that it shows you, I think, how to write a really realistic heroine, but also that it really doesn't matter whether it's a heroine or a hero. What matters is the deeds done. What matters is what these characters stand for and what they're willing to do and sacrifice for the greater good. And that, has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. It has everything to do with the strength of character. And that, I feel, is the best way to make a strong female character, where you make her femininity the least important thing about her and just make her a person. And as a man, I find myself was able to relate to this character, because I didn't see her being a woman as anything else. So Anne McCaffrey does a very good job of writing female characters and making them just feel like characters, not really making any real distinction between them or a man. Just basically showing that, again, it doesn't matter what the plumbing is. What matters is who you are as a person. That comes first and foremost. And that tends to be kind of the driving factor of her characters, and this story is no different. So, as always, again, it's a short but nice entry into kind of the overall franchise that is the Dragon Riders of Pern. So, with that said, Nerilka's story, I highly recommend it. Have you read it? If so, what did you think? How do you feel it kind of fits into the kind of the overall mosaic that has become this series? If you have not read it, as always, I'll put links in the description section below where you can check it out. Give it a read, come back, give me some of your thoughts. Like I said, not a long read, so it won't take too much of your day. If you're like a speed reader, you can probably knock it out in a few hours, honestly. or at least, you know, a couple days or whatever, if you assume you have some time, just kind of sit down and read. But yeah, give me some of your thoughts. Let me know what you think. And if it is your introduction to the Dragon Riders of Pern, come and give me a sense of what you feel, because there's a lot more for you to get into if you enjoy it. And this is a very kind of outside looking in take on this world, so to speak. If you find yourself enjoying this, I think you'll really like kind of diving down deeper into the rabbit hole. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace!